Hello everyone, I'm Mike Cahill and welcome to another installment of Hatfield Currents, a local TV show which is kind of like a news magazine show here in the community, and we end up focusing on some topical issues from time to time, and then we invite some of the people in the community to join us. We've had some historical shows and just some FYI shows. Today we've got a rather interesting guest. The water superintendent of the town of Hatfield is with us, Tony Lastowski, and we want to welcome Tony to Hatfield Currents.
Thank you.
We're actually taping Hatfield Currents show this week after having not had any rain to speak of for the last month, although we did get a bit of a respite with a few thunderstorms that have come through in the last day or so. So it's probably timely, if you will, to talk about have a show rather, that talks about Hatfields Water. And so we're hoping that today we're going to talk with Tony about the quality of our water and the capacity of our water system, maybe a little bit about the infrastructure, the state of the pipes and mains throughout the community, and talk a little bit more about what's ahead in terms of maintaining them and making sure that we continue to have a good supply of water to our homes and residences and businesses going forward. So again, Tony, welcome to Hatfield Currents.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you here. Tony, you are the water superintendent.
Yes, I am.
And have been on board for 4 years or so, like you said.
Yep.
Replaced Ed Robleski, who does help you out from time to time, continues to do that.
Absolutely, he's a big help.
And water superintendent's office, I'm presuming at this point, is in the water filtration plant.
Yes. Up
in the mountain. So we don't see much of you in the center of town, for sure.
You do.
You're down.
I'm here more than I'm there.
Are you? Oh,
yes.
Great. Oh, that's great. That's great. So tell us, let's talk about Tony first. Where are you from, and what did you do before you came to Hatfield, and what's your experiences, and can you share some of that with us?
I was born and brought up in Hadley.
Okay. As
the crow flies, I'm only a mile straight across from here, but I worked for the town of Hadley for 16 years, primarily as their mechanic or go-to guy. Worked in the water field of it forever, and I really enjoyed it, and I decided to pursue it. And this job came available, and I thought it was a great opportunity, and I actually very much like it here. Right. It's a completely different world from what I was used to.
Yeah, sometimes it's almost nicer and beneficial, I guess, to work in a community that you don't live within for some reason. You know, that I guess it has its pluses and minuses.
Well, it's just a different variety. We don't have the traffic here like we did over there, the college students, et cetera. Yeah. There's a thing over here called courtesy, which I absolutely love. So it's so much different, but excellent place to work.
Yeah. So, Tony, do you have any kind of education that you've had to undergo in order to?
Yeah, I had graduated Smith Vocational School as a mechanic. Worked in that field a lot, and I started getting into the water industry. And there's American Water Works Association that has classes, New England Water Works, and we're continuously going to those classes.
Right.
Whether it's an algebra class, so you know how to do the chemical formulas that take you 4 pages to do. Yeah. And state requires with our licenses, we have to continue to get continuing education hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is the license that you have at this point?
I've got a grade 2 treatment license and a grade 2 distribution license.
Okay.
My license, well, I also have my CDL for dump truck and for backhoe, but my licenses far supersede what I need for this facility. But
So why did you end up choosing Hatfield? I mean, obviously it was probably a change for you, but what was it that attracted you to?
It was interesting that I had been looking for a job, and I was in absolutely no hurry to leave, just if the right opportunity came up. I just so happened to be snowmobiling in Canada, and my wife noticed the ad in the paper, and she emailed me my resume, and I fixed it up, and I sent it in. 15 minutes later, and another $15 for the phone call, but that I answered. Can you come in for an interview? And here I am. After coming and seeing the town and seeing what it was all about, I was very interested.
Oh, great. Well, you know, needless to say, I'm sure the last 4.5 years have gone by pretty fast.
Yes.
Pretty fast. There's a lot going on in the water area, particularly. So, Tony, tell us, you know, what does the water superintendent do? What do you do?
Well, up until a couple of weeks ago, I was the only employee in the water department.
Okay.
That could mean
someone else that's.
We just currently hired a new full-time employee a few weeks ago.
Okay.
He was a summer helper last year.
Okay.
He was one of 2 applicants that applied, and he was qualified. He actually come in the door with licenses. Plus, he worked with us before, so
sure, known commodity.
Very helpful. But I could be doing it from reading the water meters, researching a customer's complaint on a bill, customer service. I sent out flyers under a conservation grant to teach you how to look at your meter and see if you have a leaky toilet.
Right.
Those things, which we still have available in a collector's office or a DPW director's office.
Okay.
For people that need them, but you know, sometimes we go into a house and because they're complaining about a high water bill, and we see the meter spinning and they don't hear it or see it,
right.
And you know, it's public relations to help out with them. You need a plumber and you have to fix something.
Right.
I do the billing. The collector only actually collects the money, and she also prints the bills, but I have to make sure everything's correct before it goes out to billing.
So you're doing that with some software package that's
yeah,
provided?
I mean...
Because the bills come out, and excuse me for interrupting you, but the bills kind of look like tax bills.
Yep.
Except they're water and sewer bills, and they're combined with the sewer, obviously.
Yes. Everything's based off of the water revenue.
Right.
I actually go into the town hall computer. I export information, meaning the addresses and the last reading. Okay. It goes into a computerized gun. And I actually physically have to walk to all but 200 houses in this town now. We're slowly mitigating towards where we can just drive by and read them, but you know, the other 1,275 houses, or I mean 1,075 houses, it takes some time to walk to each, because you have to walk up to each house.
You got to connect it. You got to connect that gun to the meter, to the
connector. There's two of them, but once that's done, I can export the information. I can put it into a spreadsheet, and I can look. And wait a minute, that bill doesn't look right. Something's wrong.
Usage is way up.
Yeah, you know, wait a minute. This person hasn't been home all winter.
Right.
Let's go check this out before, because once I'm all set with it, I send it to the collector, and she literally prints them, mails them, and collects the money.
Okay. All right.
So it's a nice system. We're getting better.
Right. So how about what do you do at the water filtration plant itself? First tell people what happens at that plant. Where's the water come from?
It's called Running Gutter Brook Reservoir. The water truly is coming from up above Mountain Road. It's coming from towards the city of Northampton's reservoir, which is technically, I believe, Williamsburg.
On the other side, right?
Yep. Right. It runs down off of there, through the valley, and into our reservoir. Right. We've got a very unique system that during storms, we can divert the water, the muddy, dirty water, because of heavy rains, so the reservoir stays clean. Because water comes out of the reservoir, it goes through sand filters.
Right.
Very much like the swimming pool filters with sand in them.
Right.
Except for we can't backwash them, and they're much more massive.
Right. Right.
They're a lot slower in operating too, but they're very, very efficient. The technology's been around for well over 100 years.
Right. Right.
But from there, once it's done, we check the clarity of the water nonstop and what it's doing. We introduce chlorine, which we're using chlorine gas.
So the water's coming from the reservoir after it goes through the sand filters into the filtration plant?
Yep, it comes from the reservoir up into the filtration plant through the filters.
Okay.
And on its way through the plant, it picks up chlorine.
Okay.
And it sits in another tank out in the front yard, which is 500,000 gallons. It's called contact time.
Okay.
So the chlorine can do its job.
Okay.
And when I need to, the plant turns on and off, and we'll pump water up the hill or downtown, whichever way it's got to go, to keep the storage tank full.
Okay.
So if there is a large fire or heavy demand or whatever,
right,
we have 1 million gallons of water in storage at all times.
Okay. All right. And that's not part of the reservoir. That's in a holding tank.
Yep.
That's
the
part and parcel
two
to
separate
the,
holding tanks that are right near the reservoir.
Okay. Yep. Okay. All right.
It's a very
so at any point in time, then, in addition to the million, say 1 million gallons of storage there, we've got the reservoir, which is, I think somewhere I read was
1.5.
5 million gallons in the reservoir. So we've got the equivalent of 2.5 to 3 million gallons of something like that.
Yeah, but
in quote storage, if you will.
I'm hard pressed to make 1 million gallons a day because the slow sand filters only work so fast.
Okay. All right. So there's a limitation.
And the longer they run without being cleaned, which we have to physically go in and shovel them out.
Really?
Yeah, about once every other year they got to be cleaned. So
right.
As time goes on, my capacity of what I can generate drops.
Right.
But we also have the ability that we have wells that,
right,
we can produce a lot of water.
Right. So we've got 2 wells in addition to the reservoir.
Yes.
And by the way, most of this information that I'm sharing at this point was mailed to the community. I guess every resident in the community. I'm not sure if it's necessarily everyone who's got water.
Any mailing address in the town.
Okay. The annual water report came out a month or so ago, 6 weeks or so ago.
Yeah, a little bit longer, maybe.
But we've got 2 wells.
Yes.
And one in West Hatfield, correct?
Yes.
And the other North Hatfield, I think.
One is almost on the Whately line, right at end of Pantry Road by Mountain Drive.
Okay. Yeah.
And the other one is a little bit north of Double D's restaurant, out in the field.
Right. On the other side of other side of the road, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And so, what are our capacities with those wells?
Between the 2 of them, we can do roughly 600 gallons a minute, 550, 600 gallons a minute, and if you times that by 1,440 minutes a day, we've got a pretty good capacity out of them.
Yeah. So between the reservoir and the holding tanks and the wells, we seem to be in pretty good shape from a water supply standpoint, given the fact that I think you had indicated maybe a daily peak might be 600,000, 650,000 gallons of consumption a day.
Prior to this town being metered, looking through historic records and stuff, it could have been well over 1 million gallons a day.
Right.
Now that everybody's on a water meter, my highest peak that we've produced this summer so far, even with the drought conditions we're in, has only been a little over 600,000 gallons. Yep. And our reservoir alone is sustaining that. It has no problem with it at this point.
Right.
So we're actually in really, really good shape.
Yeah. That's good to hear.
And our consumption has gone down since, which I think people have given up water in their lawns because it just...
so brown.
It's just, why bother at this point?
Yeah. So that's yeah, that's so for people who are watching who may have been wondering, for those of us particularly who remember water bans and water restrictions in the past, some of us may very well have been wondering, geez, I'm wondering when Hatfield's going to put on a water ban or a water restriction. You hear about Northampton and some of the other neighboring communities having done that. You know, we haven't had to do it.
No.
You know, because we've got such a fairly significant supply of water and storage of water, but we've also, our demand is way down as a community, which is good, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about this flyer that went out. There's a you know, we'll talk about the quality of Hatfield water. We've been talking about the capacity, how much water we actually have, but the annual report went out to everyone, and it's got a lot of helpful tidbits in here, but it's also got some interesting information in terms of where my water comes from, and but in here is the source water assessment results. And so, Tony, why don't you know, can you share with us you know, some of these results and what they really mean, the sampling results?
Sure.
It appears to me anyway, in glancing through, is that, you know, we're well within, in terms of all the measurables, we're well within the limits that have been imposed by the federal government, that are set by the federal government.
I guess what it is we sample every year for all sorts of things. Some years it is when we're mandated for it. That, you know, it could be a 10-year span. Currently, right now, I've got water sample bottles out to 10 separate residences because I have to sample for lead and copper. I'm sampling those right now, and the last time I did lead and copper, which you can see on this report, was 3 years ago, in 2009.
Yeah.
So we're currently in the process of doing that.
Right.
Aside from the 10 residences, I also have the 2 schools.
Okay.
Those are mandated to have to be tested.
Yeah. Annually.
Every 3 years.
Every 3 years. Okay.
Yep. As for a lot of these that are listed on here, some are required, some are not to be listed. I put a lot of these on here because I have dentist's office calling me about people. I have physicians calling me about how much sodium's in the water. Dentists calling me how much
fluoride.
Fluoride
rather. Yeah.
And I've actually had a few residents. Oh, well, I know you're putting fluoride in the water, so how much are you putting in? We do not add anything to the water except for chlorine.
Okay.
Our water in this town is absolutely superb. So, but most of these things, iron and manganese are the 2 of my biggest problems. Not so much the iron, but the manganese. Manganese is it's associated with iron. It when you doing a load of white laundry and you add bleach to it, it'll turn them brown in high enough concentrations. So it's not a health hazard, but it's aesthetically nobody wants brown laundry.
Brown water. Yeah.
So but fluoride, I mean, it's on here because it's naturally occurring.
It does occur naturally, right?
It's in deposits. Turbidity is just how clear the water is.
So just to again to repeat for the people watching, the fluoride that's indicated is naturally recurring fluoride. The town does not add any fluoride to the water.
We add nothing.
Okay.
Turbidity is just the clarity of the water
as
you look through it through a glass.
Yeah.
Copper and lead were well below the limits. So pH, I get a lot of questions on that as to how hard is the water.
Yeah.
And we're in a beautiful spot because it's not corroding things.
Right.
We're just above neutral. 7 is neutral, and we're just above it.
Yeah.
So we couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah.
Sodium, I keep a close eye on that one because of the wells being so close to Interstate 91.
All right.
Then we also have Mountain Road, which leaches into our aquifer for the reservoir.
Right.
So if salt's up there or whatever,
right.
We're constantly keeping an eye on a lot of things.
Yeah. Now, where are these samples taken? You had mentioned earlier about some houses are selected for certain sampling that you have to do the schools, but where are these samples taken from?
All except for the lead and copper. The lead and copper ones were designed as off of the building permits and the age of the houses, as for really susceptible to having a lot of old copper plumbing with real lead solder joints. So that's why those were picked.
Okay.
And those are spread out all through town. But every other one of these samples, I sample all 3 of the wells.
That's what I was going to
for all of them.
Okay.
And then we also have to do monthly samples.
So is this like an average then?
Yes.
Okay. Because you said
most of these only get sampled once a year.
Okay.
Because they're not really a critical thing.
Right.
I mean,
but let's use the sodium, for example. You had mentioned something about there could be a tendency for the wells to be a little bit more salty, if you will, than the reservoir because the wells are closer to 91. Do you find that that's the case? That the wells tend to be a little more?
I've been looking over the past 10 years worth of sampling, and we switched it instead of mid-August sampling for those kind of substances. We're doing it early spring. Yeah. Or late spring, I should say. Yeah. So we've got a pretty good idea of seeing the fresh stuff if it is leaching into us. Fortunately, with the way our aquifers are designed, as our zone 1 and zone 2 and where the water's coming from, 91's almost a barrier. So our water's all coming off the mountain from Linseed Roadway or off a mountain roadway. So it's kind of neat, but the way geology works.
So the bed that was created
is almost a barrier.
91, it's like a barrier. Ah, interesting.
But monthly we have to do bacteria samples, and we do 3 different samples at the water treatment plant itself. We do Brockway Smith is one place, the town hall, CNA repair on the Whately line, or in Whately, because we feed customers in Whately.
We do?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
I believe we've got 4 houses there on Main Street. We've got.
So our line actually extends, our main actually extends a little bit into Whately. Was that just happened over the years and years ago?
Yeah, it just, they needed water because they didn't have it.
Because they didn't have wells.
And we had it.
Yeah,
so
I remember something like that years ago where we connected with Whately at some point when Whately was in an emergency. But
Pantry Road, I've got another 5 up there. Route 5, we've got another. It pretty much ends at Galunka Farm, a little bit further up.
Okay.
So we supply water not only to us but to them. So, but we do have 5 locations.
How do you
where
build?
we have,
I'm just now you got me off on this tangent. How do we bill those Whately customers?
I read their meters just like I bill you guys.
Okay.
We send them just like it would be a tax bill.
But they're not on our sewer line, so they're getting just a water bill?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And is their rate the same?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right.
No, I mean they.
Okay.
Pantry Road was an interesting issue because when we developed, from knowing the history of what happened, is when they built the old master well on the Whately line.
Right. Yeah.
All those residents that had wells out there, their wells all of a sudden went dry.
Dried up. That's true.
We took all that, so they hurried up and ran a line from us to them.
Okay. All right.
So that was being neighborly. It's being neighborly.
Yeah.
So
no, that's understandable. You take somebody's water supply away from them when you put this gigantic well in. Let's talk about so in a nutshell. You used I'm trying to remember what the adjectives were before, but in a nutshell, if you were to sum up the quality of Hatfields water, how would you describe it?
Outstanding.
Okay, and that's compared to.
I've been to a lot of communities, and it's like I don't even want to wash my hands in it because it smells so bad, or it's just the composition of it, it's not killing our infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. How does it compare to Hadley? I'm just curious.
I really don't want to go.
Okay, all right.
I bring bottled water home if that explains anything.
You need to
from work
to this side of the river.
From work.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about some system improvements. I know that there's, the town voted at the annual town meeting a $2.5 million renovation / extension to the primary water main coming from the reservoir, the filtration plant down to Chestnut Street, I guess.
Yep.
Where's that at? Do you know?
Currently, we are going to be looking this Friday at the blueprints for
Okay.
it. So, if I
Who's
see
doing the engineering on it?
Comprehensive Environmental out of Marlborough, Mass.
Okay.
They've worked real well for us, but they're coming out this Friday with the plans because we've already done the surveying of the area, which means test boring.
Yeah.
Because we know there's going to be a lot of ledge and everything else on Rocks Road.
Yeah.
Flagging wetlands, things of that nature. So
Yeah.
we're going to have the plans finalized pretty much so we can submit them because we have to submit them to Mass DOT,
Okay.
the railroad because we're coming over Chestnut Street Bridge.
That's true.
We're going underneath the railroad, which is a fiasco.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got to do Conservation Commission we've got to do MIPA
all kinds
with
of wetlands involved as well as rock.
Yeah, we've got MIPA, which is Mass EPA,
Yeah.
and then we've also got to deal with the Department of Environmental Protection. So once all the permitting is done, we'll be able to put it out for bid this winter.
Yeah. You think that permitting would happen that quickly?
We're hoping.
Yeah.
I mean, we're hoping for a spring construction
Breaking
season.
ground in the spring?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that would be neat. So that would bring the water line, this new main, it would bring it to, as I remember, Gore Avenue.
Yeah,
Is that
right in the area of Gore Avenue.
Okay. What's your take on this, on the physical condition of the rest of the town's water mains, or do you know?
From what I've seen in some places, I know at the bottom of Cronin Hill Road, at the intersection of Depot,
Yeah.
I cut out a section which I have sitting at the water filtration plant, and it's got in big raised letters the date of when it was printed or made.
When was it?
1896.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that a lot of our infrastructure is over 100 years old. So.
When I got up on Upper Main Street, I found a section that was 1914. So a lot of our infrastructure is extremely old.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was rehabilitated in the 50s and into the 60s, but in some areas. But
right. So it's like a patchwork quilt in a sense,
But the quality of those are rapidly deteriorating
as well
because of the environment they're in.
Right.
If they were in absolute dry conditions, they'd live forever. But in wet, they don't like it.
Yeah. So it's likely that, and there was some discussion at town meeting that the new main that's coming down to Gore Avenue, it's just really the beginning of probably a number of major projects to sustain this water distribution system of ours. We get the greatest water in the world, but if you don't have
a way of getting it there,
right.
It's unfortunate that so many things have been put on the wayside for so many years because we weren't an enterprise fund or anything.
Right.
That we'll put it later. We'll do it later, and it's gotten to the point where the water main that we're putting in now is absolutely critical because if there was a failure anywhere on Linseed Road all the way to Brockway Smith,
right,
the town has no water.
Right.
I mean, zero.
Right.
So, and we've got river crossings that you can't believe, places that it'd take weeks just to get in there to try and fix it, never mind the environmental issues.
Right.
So, this is the first of many steps.
So let's talk about we don't have a lot of time left. let's talk about the enterprise system. You mentioned the enterprise fund. And this was something that was established a couple of years ago, as I remember, not too long ago. And at the urging of, I don't know if it was the state, or I think it was the state. And what I guess that allows the community to do is to begin to fund its water expenses, water-related expenses, out of a separate fund as opposed to from taxation.
Correct.
And I think, as I recall, the Board of Selectmen, in their best wisdom and judgment, have been moving more and more of the water expenses out of the town budget, if you will, into the enterprise fund. Do you know if all of the water department's expenses are now being covered by the enterprise fund, or basically the money that's raised from water rates?
Currently, no.
No, you don't know, or
no. Currently, no.
There's still some coming from.
There's some coming from taxation.
Yeah.
Sure, got that information for you. Because when we changed to enterprise fund, which is like a separate checking account, the water department spends it as they want.
Right.
We collect the revenue; it goes into that checking account.
Right. So our water bills, if you will, are going into this enterprise fund, and that's how the water department basically operates.
But as it stands right now, out of taxation towards the water department, the town is paying $98,000 as of right now.
Okay. And that's out of what total? It's $98,000 out of how? What's the total?
My budget would be almost $400,000 a year.
Does it include the 98, or is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, my
so
budget.
About a quarter of the water-related expenses in the community are still coming from taxation.
Yes.
Okay.
The way I understand it is, out of my budget, out of the enterprise fund is $386 or $386,000.
Yeah.
And out of taxation, I believe, is $92,000.
Okay.
The biggest expense in there is we're paying on a 40-year, basically a mortgage or long-term loan
filtration plant.
for the filtration plant. That's $70,000 right out of taxation.
Yeah.
So.
And that's principal and interest, I assume.
Yeah. Let's see. Taxation is $70,000, and I do $62,000 out of the enterprise fund.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, just to simplify things. And I don't know what the plan is here, and I'm sure Tony probably doesn't either. But between the DPW director and the selectmen, there's got to be some thought to continue to migrate some of these expenses away from the town's operating budget into this enterprise fund. So to simplify things, I guess what would happen is that if this $90-something thousand that's in the town's operating budget were to move into the enterprise fund, our water rates would probably go up by a third.
No,
Cover that?
No, we had some interesting studies done during this whole process. I had a $40,000 grant that allowed us to figure out the infrastructure, a 20-year plan of what we need, and what it came up with. And then we also had another $7,500 grant, but we keep doing grants.
Study, okay. Yeah.
And it was based on rates, water conservation, and future needs, and how to sustain ourselves.
Right.
And the selectmen had started it out with the enterprise fund that we were taking some from taxation, because nobody ever thought about the indirect cost of $41,000, which covers property insurance, my health insurance, my my other employees now, and that's a lot of money that nobody ever really thought, because it was in a general fund.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden now we have to pay for it. So they decided to do it and offset the cost. So they're moving it slowly to, I believe they got it on a tiered rate that in a few years the enterprise fund will have it.
Right.
We just increased the rates as of July 1st. to $3.65 per 100 cubic feet. That's
Yeah.
what we bill on,
Yeah.
which is 748 gallons.
And how much of an increase was that, Tony, from
I
last
believe
year?
it was a 4% or 5%.
Okay.
We were at $3.48.
Right.
So it's not, but out of the study that we did, we would have to do a 35% increase on rates in order to sustain ourselves and jump to start doing some of these projects.
Some of these projects, right.
But that's just not feasible.
Right. Right.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah, and you've got the and these expenses at this point don't include the principal and interest for the new water main, which is $2.5 million at least, or thereabouts. So
Correct.
yeah, there's there are some challenging things ahead for sure.
I mean,
in terms of
it's
funding.
all new to all of us in this area
Yeah.
because
Needless to say, I guess the bottom line here is that we've got some of the best water in the area, but chances are we're going to have to pay for keeping it good and be able to acquire it as our infrastructure ends up having to be maintained and replaced.
well, we're trying our best.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask, and I just want to offer, Tony, if Hatfield Currents can be of any use to you or to Phil Genovese, or in conveying any kind of issues that are water related, or any other issues for that matter, to the community. We certainly are here and ready, willing, and able to do that. If you'd like to come back and share anything with us, feel free to give me a call.
Absolutely.
We can set up another show, but.
Hope I don't have a need for it, but
Yeah.
whether it's getting information out to the townspeople that this is what we're trying to do, and
Right.
please support us at town meeting.
Exactly.
I'm very glad the residents actually supported us at this past one, and this
Yeah.
water main is not crucial just to the people on the water, but everybody in town.
Right. Absolutely. Everyone needed to be done. Anything else you want to share with people who are watching? Any thoughts?
Not that I can
Closing
think
thoughts?
of, except for I'm thankful for the job that I have.
Yeah. Well, we're thankful to have you in that job. I'm sure it sounds like you're doing a great job, Tony, and I've heard nothing but good things about you from other people. So keep up the good work. Well, that's about all we have as far as time is concerned for this installment of the show of Hatfield Currents. And again, we want to thank Tony Lastowski for joining us, water and superintendent of the town. We hope that for those of you who are watching, you have a better understanding of not only the quality of our water, but where it comes from, and some of the challenges that we're going to have both currently and going forward in terms of being able to deliver that water successfully to the community and to those of us as residents. For those who are watching at home, we want to thank you for watching, and if you have an opportunity to let us know that you are watching, please do that. And it's always nice to hear from people that you are watching the show. Before I sign off, I want to thank the Hatfield Currents production team for their help, and especially for John Novak, who's our interim station manager at this point, for helping put the show on. Just a reminder, the show, the programming schedules and times for the show are posted on the Channel 15 bulletin board. We're in the throes of trying to work out a rescheduling for airing of Hatfield Currents and for other shows that are locally produced on Channel 15. So look on the Hatfield bulletin board, Channel 15 bulletin board, to find out when Hatfield Currents is going to be shown. Aired. The other issue is that Hatfield Currents is available 24/7 on YouTube at this point. So go to YouTube and search for Hatfield Currents, and you should be able to come up with this show as well as some of the other more recent shows. And you can view those at your leisure 24/7. So again, I hope you know a little bit more about Hatfield Water. Have a good drink, and thanks for joining us. For Hatfield Currents, I'm Mike Cahill. Watch yourself, Hatfield.